Hello, my name is Michael Conneely, and this is a video about the astrology of August 2018. And it's accompanied by an extensive blog. The report I'm holding, which is in the blog, is 10 pages long, because there's so much going on in August 2018. And also in the blog is a video and a presentation from my wife Maggie Pashley about, she works as a healer, and this particular healing presentation is about healing blocks to sporting success, which ties in interestingly with the fact that Mars in Vedic Capricorn is so emphasized this time, and Mars and the proper handling of Mars is a major factor in sporting success. But anyway, this video is about the astrology of August 2018. And I actually want to start off with the last item in the blog, because I think it's fascinating and easily overlooked. And yet, if we can embrace it and develop our awareness on this point, we could do very well in August. So it's actually about the Chiron square Saturn, where Saturn is indeed retrograde. And basically, Chiron is a statement of our woundedness, of our individual wound. And Saturn, Lord Shani, is Lord of Karma, and he quite remorselessly can call us to face things we need to face in our life, things we need to work at. And these two, Chiron and Saturn, are combined in August. In fact, the square started on approximately the 3rd of July and lasts till the end of September. And squares, 90-degree aspects, are quite remorseless. And basically Saturn is remorseless. So I'm definitely finding that this Chiron-Saturn square can create a sort of joyless focus on the issue of the areas of wound in our life. But Saturn's divine purpose is for us to, burn negative karma and to succeed through hard work. And so while this square is in the heavens, we're given the possibility of stepping out of what has been our life trajectory so far. And all the assumptions, the rationalizations, the denials, the evasions about our woundedness. And so it can be quite miserable to have to go into our woundedness, but we can develop insight and get healing and think of ways of stepping out of it and handling it. And, interestingly at this time, lying behind the video Maggie's doing, it's where someone who's quite good at a sport can actually sort of crumble whenever they're in a competition. And that's because their Mars is wounded. And we need our warrior Mars to express ourselves rightfully and get things done. But we have obviously to use it with awareness of its malefic possibility, of its possibility of hurting others. But if our Mars is part of our wounded areas in our life, then that can indeed hold us back from sporting success. and the awareness of this is valuable, and of course it can be healed. So I wanted to start off with that rather background and little known Saturn Chiron square, because I think it's completely underrated and undernoticed in astrological awareness at the moment. So now let's go to a couple of more forefront features of August 2018. And by the way, there's no way I can cover all the items of crucial interest for August 2018 in this video. So please definitely see the associated blog where these points and so many more are written up. But I think the key factor to be aware is that we're still in eclipse mode, particularly from the lunar eclipse. And in fact, we're in a 3 eclipse cycle, with the third and final eclipse being due on the 11th of August. And it varies to what extent an eclipse impacts, the planets in our birth chart, whether it is on our ascendant, for example. So it varies how much an eclipse will affect an individual. But generally speaking, energies are low in an eclipse cycle, and post this lunar eclipse, which is the biggest eclipse of the 21st century. And generally speaking, our emotions are oversensitive, and depending on your chart and your personality, you might not like to admit you're being oversensitive and go into righteous anger, threat or whatever. And also, most definitely at eclipse time, the shadow looms larger. And all of us come into this life with shadow through our DNA, from our inheritance, and shadow also from our past lives. And of course, we also stuff material into our shadow area as we progress through life and go through hurtful, shocking or difficult situations. But certainly one of the functions of eclipses is revelation, and we are called to acknowledge our shadow, to bring it into the open, and in fact the eclipse energy does that for us. And unless we make light our shadow and bring it into the open, what it means is that hidden areas of our psyche direct our thinking and direct our life. And in fact, we can be completely unaware of our motivations. Why am I doing this? Why am I endlessly thinking that? And so at an eclipse time, it's valuable to take stock of shadow material. You could even write a sort of page up about oversensitive emotions, difficulties of managing mind, and shadow material that you think you can identify that is calling to be recognized, calling to be changed. Because you see, basically our ego does not like recognizing shadow and wounded material, and so our ego squirms and blocks the divine aim in the eclipse energy, which is to make manifest the shadow and the hidden and the wounded. And the divine aim of making these things visible and into the light is that we can dislodge our unhelpful scripts, and we can be open to inspiration and healing. We can become the person we actually were meant to be. there's a lot more I could say about that. I mean, basically, in one sense, a strand in life is that life is a series of battles, a series of battlefields. And unless we see the nature of the battlefield for what it is, we will probably metaphorically die in that battle. But what we're meant to do is acknowledge our shadow material and our weaknesses and our woundedness, and so move from operating within our egoic self on the battlefield of life and becoming that wonderful thing that we can all glimpse and all reach for, and maybe, yes, become the spiritual warrior. And so that's the essence, for example, of the dark goddess message, like Niriti or Kali. And indeed, it's central as the real, true, deep meanings of the Morrigan, the war goddess of the ancient Irish, whose place of habitation is not at all far from here while I'm filming this. So I can't possibly summarise all the strong and difficult, often difficult, features of the astrology of 2018 in the time available, but the first thing I'd say is that because August astrology has so many difficult features, somehow we have to sustain calm and stability. We have to sustain calm and stability. We have to be reflective and consistent and careful. And you see, it's not all difficulties, because there's masses of inspiration coming through at this time. And, I try to detail the inspiration openings in my blog. And that's why I feel the Chiron-Saturn square that I mentioned is important. But the transiting aspects in the heavens at the moment are awesome. Ketu, the south node, is conjunct Mars, which is violent at one level. But of course it's in Capricorn, where Mars is exalted. And so, that's associated with technical skill, for example. And, by coincidence or not coincidence, like I'm building an extension to our Airbnb at the back of the house. And I've had to learn so much about, modern methods of, building walls and roofing and so forth, because my previous experiences from the late 60s and the 80s. But it's worth it. And weirdly, people turn up and give, really, really helpful tips. So I think it's meant and blessed. And when I filmed the July Astrology and Healing newsletter video, I think the walls were only about 2 foot high. Well, now they're 8 foot high. So I think this bears out the technical skill aspect of Mars in Capricorn, and indeed Mars Ketu in Capricorn. And Mars energy is big at the moment, and so we hope that it doesn't make us irritable and driven and having tantrums, but able to control that because we're aware it can happen, and putting energy into hard needed work. Because our success in life partly depends on our good Mars. And, for example, I teach Avashtas, which is a statement in Vedic astrology of the standing of each of our planets and how the planets treat each other. And so very often people with, say, Saturn conjunct Mars have a terribly hard time achieving, because Mars wants to do. And Saturn says, no way, block, test, check everything. Are you really ready? Are you sure? So that's just one very simple example. and it's very relevant to the present Mars-Ketu conjunction. And Mars, by the way, is record close to the Earth at the moment, and he won't be this close again until 2035. So it really is worth taking stock of your Mars. And on my YouTube channel, I've got a video presentation of the nature of each planet. And each planet has a divine nature, but also there's the issue of how each of us individually experiences a planet, because we experience the divine planet through filters of sign, house and aspect. And if you're doing one of my astrology programs, you also get a journey, a guided journey, where you can work on the issue of how each planet manifests in your life, what its divine nature is, and what you might be able to do to heal it when there's problems. I mentioned Avastas, and Avastas is a wonderful scoring system where, you know, each planet has a raw strength score, and another planet can boost the score, or another planet can utterly trash the score of one of your planets. So, you know, get in touch with me for an astrology reading. I do worldwide readings, many of them. Or enroll on one of my wonderful astrology courses. Each of them has as its focus your chart and my chart. And so that guarantees that the sharing is authentic and caring, and it's not just sort of astrobabble or, you know, head stuff. And it's always linked to healing if necessary. And there's always crossover if someone's doing Vedic astrology course to Western astrology if they want that, and vice versa. So Mars turns direct on the 27th of August, and maybe your Mars initiatives have been held up during the retrograde period. And so after that, while Mars is still in Vedic Capricorn, we'll feel the fact that Mars is exalted in Vedic Capricorn. Because while any planet is retrograde, it's difficult and frustrating for us to get his energies right. And so in the case of Mars, we can be seething and held back and repressed. And indeed, retrograde Mars can bring to the surface feelings of past failures, distortions and sublimations of our Mars energy. And this can all drive us mad. But again, try to take note of what you experience, because that will enable you to have insight to which you can add healing, to heal, you know, the difficulties of Mars or any other planet in your particular destiny. And when Mars goes direct and exalted, of course, we will have to be careful how we handle, you know, the machete-carrying warrior that is Mars. And indeed, in terms of the Vedic nakshatras, the wonderful 27-sign lunar zodiac, Mars is in Uttarashadha nakshatra, which is ruled by the sun and has as its power animal the mongoose. So this is a very autocratic and potentially aggressive Mars. Okay, let's just go on to the next item, just picking out from the many items on the blog. And I'd like to focus on the August 11th solar eclipse. So this is actually in Ashlesha nakshatra at the end of Vedic Cancer. And the thing about Ashlesha is someone with, say, moon or big emphasis in Ashlesha nakshatra feels deep hurts and retaliations. and indeed can be so sharp in their verbal expression or writing and destroy. Because it's deep, hurt serpent energy in Ashlesha. Ashleshas are dominated by unconscious material. And, I think the Vedic response is sort of thousands of mantra, but that creates robot. It doesn't free the talents of the of the person with a moon or a major planet in Ashlesha Nakshatra. And these people are often so visionary and into energy healing. So they mustn't be sort of robotized or, sterilized really by dampening down their inspiration through formulaic mind management techniques. They need to be able to practice, well, particularly I often find vision work and energy work. And certainly I think there was a big eclipse in Ashlesha in January of this year, and it was dam burst for quite a few Ashlesha students and people I were doing reading for. Oh yes, and of course this eclipse occurs at the same time as Mercury retrograde and in the same sign. So this is a horrible Mercury retrograde that's coming up, and be particularly careful. Managing the mind, being gentle in matters of communication, and being careful in issues of IT and post. The next thing I'd mention is dangerous days. In the June newsletter, I pointed out that the moon has to go through 3 malefic